What's up, everyone? I hope everyone's having a phenomenal day. I'm back, day 2 days in a row. I can't even believe I'm doing it myself. All right. So just some articles that I picked out today that I think were really important that I came across. This one, first off, from Wolf Street, the stories behind business, finance, and money. Despite surging inflation, junk bond yields dropped to record low and dish out negative real yields to Fed-whacked investors. I'm not sure who writes these titles, but whoever does needs to rethink some of them. It's just too convoluted. I don't know if convoluted is the right word, but yeah, moving on. In this wondrous credit markets where everything is now completely out of whack, the first thing that happened after a freak show of CPI inflation hitting 5% was that junk bond yields fell to new records lows. So if you remember from my video yesterday, how a bond works is price moves inversely to yield. So as the price goes down, the yield goes up, right? And as price goes up, the yield goes down, right? So junk bond yields drop to a record low, which means the yield is very low, which means the price is, if the yield is at a record low, the price is at a record high, right? Well, why are junk bonds, or essentially junk bonds are credit risk bonds of triple C's and below. They're speculative bonds, right? They're not safe. They're not considered like a mortgage-backed security or like a treasury. Like treasuries are backed by the U.S. government, so it's like a safe bond, or like a bond issued from like Apple or Coca-Cola, right? These are junk bonds. They're high-risk bonds, so they offer a higher yield. Well, why are people searching for yield right now? And it's because yields across the board are so low that if you look at pension funds, and I rewatched the video from yesterday, so I'm hoping that this audio is much higher quality. I'm using the webcam. My next step is to work out the issues with my old mic and see what goes on with that. But pension funds, mainly pension funds, I assume they're thirsty for yield, right? Because they've overpromised. And they cannot get the same yield that they could back when yields were much higher. So these promises to pay all these pensions is an issue in a low interest rate environment, because these pension funds can't invest that money and get a good return on their investment in a safe way. So they're going further and further down the risk curve. So the fact that investors are diving into, and not investors like you and I, but investment institutions, pension funds, are buying into these junk bonds, is pretty interesting. Those triple C and below rated bonds is the only category in the U.S. corporate bond spectrum whose average yield is above the rate of inflation. Everything else has a negative real yield. Now, real yield is the nominal rate minus inflation. So let's say inflation is at 5%, but you're getting paid 6% yield on a bond. Well, then you're earning 1%. However, a negative real yield, like the real yield, is 1%. However, if the inflation was 6%, but you're getting paid 5% yield, then you're actually losing 1% to inflation, and that negative 1% is a real yield. So the average yield of B-rated bonds, highly speculative, dropped to a record low of 4.46. or to a negative real yield of negative 0.53. So I guess even B-rated bonds are considered highly speculative. I just thought it was C and below, but I guess triple C and below is extremely speculative. I don't know about this Wolf Street. This is just something that I came across, and I was very interested and intrigued about it. I didn't read this article. I will end up reading it, but it's not. I've lost interest in it. Anyways, moving on. Biden and G7 leaders will endorse a global minimum corporate tax of at least 15%. Now, they endorse it. Doesn't mean it's going to go through. Just like Biden's infrastructure deal, 1.2 or $2.2 trillion that he wanted to pass, they're just going to endorse it. And this is a corporate tax. The majority of this isn't going to affect most citizens. I think of course, this specific proposal won't affect the majority of the population. What it'll do is it'll affect a small portion of the population, which the majority doesn't like or thinks is ripping them off. So it'll affect the rich, the wealthy, the top corporate earners. But then what will happen is it'll lay a foundation for this agency to expand its control, and it'll expand their tax policies to inevitably include even the citizens. I mean, look at how I believe income tax was mainly on the rich when it first was proposed and passed into law. I think it was mainly on the rich, and then obviously they expanded it. And what will happen is, so these tax brackets that Biden's new tax brackets are at, everybody's taxes are going up, and it's mostly the higher income brackets that are going up in taxes. Well, what's going to happen is, due to inflation, even if what's the word I'm looking for? Earning payout, wages. Even if wage inflation increases as well, right, where people are earning more, well, now they're just bumping you up into higher and higher tax brackets. So in the cost of living is going up, and yeah, the wage inflation is increasing as well. So everyone's earning more, but all that's doing is bumping them up into higher and higher tax brackets. So this one, very interesting. Of course, Biden was supported because this guy probably only has 20 brain cells left in his fucking brain. He just does what he's fucking told. Can't have any fun. I would hate to be in his position. I'll tell you what. It's sad. He's been a career politician for 50 years. He's been in government. It's absolute insanity that he's now our president. But anyways, Joe Biden and leaders of the G7 group of nations will publicly endorse a global minimum corporate tax of at least 15% on Friday. They'll just endorse it. One piece of a broader agreement to update international tax laws for a globalized digital economy. Right? Headed back towards globalism. See, Trump was a hiccup in their plan. Right? The plan is towards global socialism, globalism, one world government, one world currency, one world religion, right? And Trump was a hiccup in their plan because he focused on nationalism. And of course, no matter what sector or any topic that you talk about, there's always going to be those people that take it to the extreme, right? Those Catholic evangelists, KKK, not the Nazis. These people took things to the extreme, and so of course when it comes to nationalism, there are going to be people who take it to extremes. But it's about focusing on providing for Americans. Right? Like, how come we send billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign aid when we can't even help the returning vets who, have, lost limbs and arms and have lost the ability to coexist in common society because of what they've just experienced, and they've gone through this trauma of war and becoming friends with people and then watching those people die, and and coming back and trying to have to live in society and get reacclimated with getting back to a normal day life where they don't have to constantly be looking over their shoulder, and then they still have all of those traumas still embedded within themselves. It's part of their psyche, and we need to have some sort of infrastructure that's set up to really help transition returning veterans back into society, and we need to have support systems in place if that's what we're going to do, right? I mean, if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to go over and invade other countries, then that's what we have to do. Now that's a whole nother different topic that we don't need to talk about today. But I'm not pro invading other countries. If something is seriously happening that we need to really step in and do something about, yeah, sure. But just because the leader of a country decides to stop selling oil for dollars and start selling oil for gold or oil for euros, that doesn't give us the right to go and invade their country and then assassinate their leader. Oh shit! Should I have said that? And especially on a YouTube video. That's all right. I'm nowhere even close to being monetized. Let's see here. Continuing on here. The leaders will also announce a plan to replace digital services tax, which targeted the biggest American tech companies, with a new tax plan linked to the places where multinationals are actually doing business rather than where they are headquartered. For the Biden administration, the global minimum tax plan represents a concrete step towards its goal of creating what is called a foreign policy for the middle class. It's interesting, right? This global minimum tax plan is a foreign policy for the middle class. The strategy aims to ensure that the globalization and trade are harnessed for the benefit of working Americans and not merely for billionaires and multinational corporations. Right, because how would a middle class individual profit from globalization and trade? Just curious. Somebody who goes to work as a fucking electrician or a fucking concrete worker, or construction worker, how are they going to profit from what was the word? Globalization and trade? Well, I guess the supplies are going to be cheaper, right? If we're all global, everything's free trade, then everything will be cheaper because somebody in a poorer country, that those countries that can fucking pay them absolutely nothing, a quarter a day, like there's no laws, and they have no other option other than making a quarter a day, and they have slave labor, and they can produce everything, and then it can be cheaper getting sent here, and so maybe their wages go up. But no, that's not what's going to happen. How corporations run. Corporations are for profit. That's all they care about. That is what a corporation is set up for. It's for profit, unless it's a non-profit corporation, unless it's a non-profit organization. But a corporation is set up to generate profit, right? To pay the least amount as possible for resources, to charge the most amount, and labor is a resource. So these people who are, and any increase in these increase in costs for these resources is going to be passed on to the end consumer. Right? Whether it's through increased price or, I forgot the correct term, shrinkflation, where it's the same price, but they're just offering less. Right? Like, the toilet paper roll has 800 sheets, and then due to the rising cost of lumber, these paper towel rolls, they keep the same price. So you feel like you're spending the same amount of money at the grocery store, but instead of 800, you're only getting 600 sheets, right? So that's just one example. For the rest of the world, the GMT, Global minimum tax. Wow, they already got it acronymed. Is intended to end the tax-cutting arms race that has led some countries to cut their corporate taxes to much lower than others in order to attract multinational corporations, companies. See, I'm okay. Let's cut taxes. Let's shrink the government. How overbloated the government is. I mean, the budget for next year, $6 trillion. Only planning on bringing $4.17 trillion in as revenue. We know they're going to spend $8-9 trillion. But already planning for a $1.87 trillion budget deficit for next year. $1 trillion. Even if you made $1 billion, it would take you 1,000 years to earn $1 trillion. 1,000 years. 10 lifetimes to earn $1 trillion. At $1 billion a year. At the average American household income of $50,000 a year, you're talking about 200 million years to earn $1 trillion. Government's too big. Shrink the government, privatize everything. That's what I would support. Vote for me, Chris Thompson, 2032. Actually, I think I can run in 2024. How old do you have to be? 34 to be president? Is it 34? I believe it's 34. I could run in 2024. How old do you have to become president? 34. 35. Oh, no. Wow. 35. So 2024. So I think I can become president next year. Vote for me, or in 3 years. 3 years, guys. I'm 32. 3 years. 2024. Chris Thompson. 2024. Let's go. Let's fucking rock on, right? Let's fucking make that happen. That's the old video. Yeah. Shrink government. Privatize everything. More freedoms. Less control. Vote for Chris. Nah, I'm going to get fucking assassinated if I get any sort of traction. They ain't going to let that happen. Come on now. Come on. Come on. The only reason why they couldn't assassinate Trump is because he's part of it, right? Well, I don't know what I'm talking about. JFK was part of it. He grew up in the wealthy echelon and fucking assassinated him, right? So, anyways, moving on. If widely enacted, the GMT would effectively end the practice of global corporations seeking out low-tax jurisdictions like Ireland and the British Virgin Islands to move their headquarters to, even though their customers, operations, and executives are located elsewhere. Who the fuck cares, right? Like, if I had enough money, right? If I was wealthy enough, which I plan to be at some point in my life, whether I'm 40 or 50 or 35, I plan to move. I plan to move to somewhere where I don't have to pay. Why do you think all these wealthy people are moving to Puerto Rico? Because they can keep their U.S. citizenship and not pay any taxes, any federal taxes, right? They still pay taxes to Puerto Rico, right? But they don't pay federal taxes. It's like genius. You know, it's like, oh, you give up your rights as a citizen, move to one of these islands. Sorry, guys. You move to one of these islands, and you pay a small portion of tax to them, and but you have to pay this massive amount of tax to the U.S. government. I'm okay with it. I don't like taxes. Taxes are literally like the Revolutionary War was fought over a 3% tax. 3% tax, and here we are. And here we are. And here we are, like, paying 37%. I mean, I'm not paying 37%, but still 25% is a lot to pay into this overbloated, overweight thing we call a government. I mean, it's just too big. People want to expand it. It's absolutely insane. So the second major initiative Biden and the G7 leaders will announce on Friday is a plan that they are actively considering to expand the IMF's supply of SDRs, and internal IMF currency that are available to low-income countries. So the SDR, you don't have access to the SDR. Okay, believe me, when I first started, I was like, I don't understand this. Is this like a dollar? Like I can go? No, it's. You want to learn about it? Go research it. This plan is aimed to expanding the international development of financing the poor countries and helping them purchase COVID vaccines and recover more quickly from the pandemic's effects. I'm over that. Next, global minimum tax rate could drive businesses away from the U.S., Watchdog warns. This is from Fox Business. Biden and G7 leaders embrace a 15% global minimum tax rate. And I think the tax rate, I don't know where, there's a specific amount. It's a large amount that this actually affects. Now, let me say this. Obviously, like I said, it's going to eventually be expanded out, but this is like laying the foundation for it. Look at Janet Yellen. Jesus Christ. If the Fed, which is a private corporation of international bankers, owned by international bankers, and the government, which is public, for the people, by the people, supposedly, now have merged because Janet Yellen used to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Now she's Secretary of Treasury. Come on, y'all. Stop. Just stop. We know that this Taxpayer Protection Alliance argues that a higher global minimum tax rate would ultimately be passed on to workers and consumers through reduced compensation and higher. Isn't that what I just said? Didn't I just said that? Don't even have to read this. Visualizing the history of the U.S. inflation over the last 100 years. All right, this is the period right here that is one of the driving factors of why I'm invested in silver, right? Because prior to this, right, all back here, the dollar was backed by gold. 1971, Nixon abandons the Bretton Woods system, the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was done in 1944, which, it's right here. During World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement was established, pegging the U.S. dollar to gold. Actually, I like this chart, because here we go. So we're on the gold standard. And then 1944 pegged the U.S. dollar to gold. So we were technically on the dollar standard because the dollar was backed by gold. And then because of the Vietnam War was becoming too expensive, too costly, and we didn't have the gold reserves to back up all the money that we needed to print to pay for the Vietnam War, Nixon temporarily suspended. He literally said temporarily suspended the convertibility of dollars into gold. Temporarily suspended, which now you're starting to understand what these politicians or what these policymakers are saying when they say things like transitory. Oh, inflation is transitory. They don't know that. They can't see the future. They don't know that. Oh, it's only temporary. It's a load of bullshit. All right. So 71, Nixon took us off the gold standard. We saw a huge spike in inflation due to the Vietnam War, and it ran into the oil crisis, and we had these huge levels of inflation, right? And back then, Paul Volcker was able to raise interest rates to a very high level and was able to control inflation or get inflation under control and start suppressing inflation by having these super high interest rates. I mean, if you look back, I mean, you could go to the bank, put your money in a savings account, get like 13%. I think the federal funds rate peaked out at like 17%. I think the 10-year Treasury peaked out at like 20%. What does it say? Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker introduced bold anti-inflationary measures and what did he do? He raised interest rates. He raised interest rates so high. I'm pretty sure the 10-year hit. Let's see here. The 10-year. Let's go back. How far back does this go? This 10-year. The 10-year hit 15.8%. Almost 16% on the 10-year. It's about the same thing on the 30-year. Oops. But still, 15%, right? So you raise interest rates above inflation, and that starts tamping down inflation, right? It creates disinflation. And so that's what we see here. We see inflation start plummeting. And so they started lowering interest rates. Well, what happens when you lower interest rates? You foster economic growth, right? Because everything becomes, any debt becomes cheaper to service. So corporations, consumers, families take on more and more debt. And we had this massive economic boom into the 80s. And then when Alan Greenspan took over for Paul Volcker, he realized this, and he continued to drop interest rates and continued to bring lower and lower interest rates to really expand that boom. And we saw that boom, which inevitably ended up into the tech bubble, and it popped in the early 99 2000. It popped and came crashing back down. But we still had 40 years of low levels of inflation. Look at this, under 5%. Now that with all the economic and fiscal money printing that's been going on, inflation numbers have started to pick up. CPI numbers came out like 3 weeks ago at 4.2% year over year, which is not shown on this chart. But inflation numbers have started to pick up. Demand strengthens as the U.S. emerges out of the pandemic. Inflation levels see the sharpest jump since 2009. So inflation numbers have started to pick up, and I think it's a potential that we could see, because the Fed keeps saying inflation is transitory, it's only temporary. And now they're saying, well, inflation's good. They're coming out and saying inflation's good for us. What it tells me is that the genie's out of the bottle, and they're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle, right? Because if you remember from my video yesterday, in 1980, 1979, 1980, the reason why inflation was able, the reason why Paul Volcker was able to get inflation under control is because he raised interest rates a dramatic amount. If we can go back here, unfortunately, this, yeah, there we go. So as you can see, in the late 70s, look at this. We had the 10-year at 7%, and it went all the way up to fucking 16%. Fed funds rate. Curious as to what the Fed funds rate was. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that fucking spike, guys. Come on. This is actually, we'll leave a full chart. All right? So here's where we were just looking at that other chart. This is the federal funds rate, right? This is at like under 5%. The federal funds rate peaked out at 19%, right? So Paul Volcker was able to raise interest rates to 19% in order to corral inflation. The issue now is if inflation numbers continue to rise, the Fed right now cannot raise interest rates to 5%, to 10%. Because look at this. Anytime we had a recession, which are these gray bars, the Fed lowered interest rates, right? Boom. Okay, foster growth, we raise interest rates. Okay, it's healthy. Okay, Greenspan did a good job here. Okay, let's lower it a little bit of stress. Okay, let's raise it again. No, too much stress caused a recession. Let's lower interest rates. Boom. All right, let's keep it. Okay, we can start raising it again. All right. Oh, we raised them too high. Let's level it off. Okay, it's too late now. Now we're in a recession. Let's lower interest rates. So as you can see, after Paul Volcker got inflation under control here, we've never been able to get back above. See, back here, back when we were on the gold standard, we were able to, raise interest rates higher than the last time. We raised interest rates higher than last time. And then in the 70s, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, and inflation started to pick up, we're like, oh fuck, we need to raise it. Okay, we got to lower it after that recession. And then we really need to get inflation under control. But it caused a lot of pain, right? Raising interest rates this high caused a lot of pain. But back then we also weren't $28 trillion in debt. So it's going to be an issue when the Fed starts raising interest rates. Because look at this. We had such a long level after the GFC, Great Financial Crisis, look how long we were at zero before we started raising interest rates. March 2016. We just barely got to 2%. And we're like, oh, no, it's too much. And what happened in 2018? December 2018, right there. Boom. Stocks sold off, right? Let's go to my trading view. Trading view. Don't want to look at that chart. Boom. Let's pick the S&P and 2018. So we're on the hourly. Let's go to the daily. 2018. Where's 2018? December 2018. So it was actually started in October. So that's interesting. So I thought it was December. December is when we had the massive sell-off spike. Yeah, November into December. That was a massive sell-off. That's when the Fed said, uh-oh, well, guess we're not raising rates any higher. Let's leave it flat. And then the repo markets, the overnight lending market, froze in 2019, August of 2019. And then, of course, we had the pandemic. So then they dropped interest rates all the way back down to zero. We're technically in a recession right now. So anytime they raise interest rates, it causes stress in the economy, because anything with a variable rate of interest, personal, corporate, or government, all costs more to service, right? And so it causes stress because now you're paying more towards the interest on the debt as opposed to discretionary spending. And 70% of the U.S. economy is based on consumerism. That's what the U.S. economy is 70% of it's based on, is consuming. So if people have less discretionary income to actually consume, well, then that's bad news for the economy. So then the Fed has to lower interest rates again. Instead of just going through the pain of tightening your belt, right? Tightening your belt, saying, okay, I guess we're eating hamburger helper and 70-30 beef, and I guess we're having macaroni and tuna fish, or macaroni and hot dogs, instead of going through a period of, okay, pain where we have to tighten our belts to actually put ourselves in a position of prosperity after. We say, no, we'll kick the can down the road. We'll drop interest rates back to zero. So what happens next time? When the Fed starts raising interest rates, there's no way we're going to get to 2% on the federal funds rate. No way. No way. Sign, seal, deliver it right here. No way. If the Fed starts raising interest rates, do we get to 2% before causing another meltdown in stocks or meltdown in the economy, and the Fed supports the economy, right? Supports they expand quantitative easing, whatever the case may be. This video is going on way longer than I expected. So CPI, which tracks a basket of consumer goods, it's just how it measures inflation: food, housing, apparel, education, medical care, recreation, transportation, other goods and services. You know what I noticed is not on that list? Energy. Unless it's part of that other goods and service, but you would think that energy, services such as food and energy. I think the core CPI doesn't include food or energy, but this CPI, just the CPI does. Okay, moving on. The price of zero. The 55 corporations that paid zero in federal income taxes and spent $450 million on political spending. Okay. Again, why are they spending the $450 million, almost $500 million on political spending? Because they want to lobby to keep the tax code the same so they can continue. It's not that these corporations are doing anything illegal or wrong. Well, I guess it could be wrong in the moral sense of the word, but they're not doing anything illegal because the tax code is written that way. So it's not that we need to tax these people more. It's that we need to fix the tax code. Ultimately, in my opinion, eliminate taxes. But nevertheless, these 55 corporations paid no federal corporate income tax in 2020 and spent nearly $450 million on lobbying and campaign contributions over the last 3 election cycles. So 3 election cycles, what's that, 12 years? FedEx spent the most $71 million. Charter Communications, $64 million. American Electric Power, $42 million. Duke Energy, Textron, $22 million. Are they just going to have a list? Yeah, FedEx, you can see here. And I'll leave a link in the description of all of these articles so you can actually go and, you know, if you want to read them, you can. What is this? President's, what? Why did I click on this? What is this? Oh, this is how I looked up how old you have to be. All right, so I think that's it. All right, so listen, I hope you enjoyed the video. I really appreciate you taking the time today to watch it. I really had a lot of fun. I shared a lot of thoughts. I went off on a lot of tangents, but it's my channel. I get to do whatever the fuck I want, right? Well, listen, I appreciate you watching it. I'm like looking at my screen and I'm like, because I'm so new to like looking into the camera that, yeah, I hope you watched it. I hope the audio was recorded. I hope it came out clearer than it did yesterday. If not, I'm going to have to figure out something else to do. I'm going to continue to expand. I'm going to continue to share my thoughts. I'm going to continue to share my knowledge, insight, expertise, if you want to call it that. I am by no means an expert. You can tell by the way that I talk. I'm just a normal human being. And I appreciate you liking, subscribing, commenting. Tell me what I did wrong, how I can improve, what you liked about it, what you didn't like it. Tell me in the comments. If you like the video, like it, and if you want to subscribe, I don't give a shit. I'm just doing this for myself so I can start producing stuff instead of just always being a consumer. While I'm still consuming at the same time. Anyways, I love you. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.